Kerala Urban Policy Commission has brought out its report for Kerala's urban nature for the next 25 years. A very profound report considering the growth trajectories that we are going to make. And joining with us today is Dr. M. Satheeshkumar from Tunis University, Belfast. He chaired the commission which has brought out this very important document, not only important in terms of Kerala's but in India's perspective as well. So let's go straight to him and ask what is really profound about this document. How important will be that?
So this document, the Kerala Urban Policy Commission Report 2025, is one of the most landmark reports that have been produced, the first in the state of Kerala, the first for the government of India. Particularly for India, this is really useful and very important because India is transitioning into a major economic growth power. Along with economic growth, we also have to understand how to balance economic growth in the wake of climate change. One of the big challenges of India today and the globe today is about the fast changing nature of climate and how to deal with the challenges imposed by climate change. We have seen climate change becoming really important, particularly in the global south, and cities in the global south are at increased risk from climate change. So when I took over the challenge of steering the whole commission for the next 15 months, we started with this idea that we have to protect the lives of the people in the cities of the global south, and particularly we have to produce a report which will support and help improve the resilience and adaptability of communities in the cities of Kerala.
In terms of projection, how do you see the urban growth of Kerala so far Kerala's perspective is concerned in the next 25 years? What will be the situation after 25 years?
Thank you. So in terms of the Commission's work, because there was no census done and we did not have any census since 2011, we had to really think in terms of how do you get a realistic understanding of the rural-urban transformation taking place in the state of Kerala. For that purpose, we were able to employ two very specific measures. One was to look at the urban growth, the projected urban growth for the state of Kerala for the next 30 years, till 2050. So for that purpose, we were very fortunate to have Professor K.S. James, who provided us with the population projection, urban population projections until 2050. And the second measure that we took was to understand what is the nature of urban sprawl, because Kerala is very unique in terms of its urbanization. So Kerala's uniqueness about urbanization is there's a continuum, a rural-urban continuum across the length and breadth of the country, from the north to the south.
So does that mean Kerala should be treated as a single urban unit, or?
Yes. So whether we can treat Kerala as a single urban unit, I think by 2050, you will definitely see Kerala emerging much more urban than ever before. So let me give you some figures here. So when we look at the urban spread from the coastal areas to the inland, we find that urban sprawl is very much happening, moving from the coastal areas into the midlands. Okay, so we have the sea is fixed, okay, and the mountains are fixed. The Wayanad side and all the mountains are fixed. So between the Silent Valley and the sea, people cannot go into the sea. So you're squeezed in between this narrow stretch of land of 128 kilometers. So the whole idea is, how do you make people understand that the significance of being able to live sustainably is so important? So Kerala's urbanization in terms of population projection is showing that there is going to be definitely a south-northward drift. The shift, the future urban growth, the future urban agglomerations will happen more in the northern side of Kerala because that's an untapped capacity. Okay. Areas in the southern part of Kerala is already getting saturated. With climate change, the ability to build more and more cities in that part of the world is going to be limited. Increasing vulnerability will be there in the southern part of Kerala. So the drift, urbanization drift is going to be northernward towards Kannur, Calicut, Kasaragod, right up that way. And so that is one shift that is going to be very prominent, and that is why the corridors that are emerging are also appearing there. At the same time, we also have the urban sprawl, where the shift is more towards midlands. Now, midlands are facing huge amount of droughts. Okay, again, the whole idea is that it's not easy. People moving into the midlands are suffering. The areas are suffering from drought. All the watersheds are oversilted. We have huge challenges of keeping the watershed areas open so that people are able to utilize the spaces.
As you have touched upon that point, we're talking about climate resilient model as well for the future. So how, on a level of adaptation, how easy it would be for Kerala, considering that Kerala definitely will be facing the brunt of climate change, although not of its own making, but due to the global factors. How equipped are we?
So, in terms of the ability to deal with climate change, see, Kerala is very unique in the sense that it has a very educated population. The ability, the citizen science has been very actively established. So, we have an educated, scientifically minded population, but the ability to deal with climate change requires a complete quantum shift in the way we do our day-to-day business. So, the behavioral changes are really important. I use the model knowledge, attitude, and practice. You cannot change practice without changing attitudes. You cannot change attitudes without the knowledge. So knowledge leads to changes in attitude, needs to changes in practice. So ultimately, the knowledge, attitude, and practice framework is very important because people in Kerala are already knowledgeable, but you have to provide them with more information about what climate change really means. And we have had the devastating 2018 floods. We had the landslides in Wayanad. So there are very clear indications that we are vulnerable, but we have to take proactive steps. So most important is how do we respect the boundaries, the environmental, I call it the ecological limits, the environmental limits imposed on the state of Kerala. So respecting the ecological limits to economic growth. Respecting the limits to economic growth imposed by ecology is very important. And I think that is where we should be able to think very carefully, plan very carefully, provide zonings. You cannot have FAR uniformly across the state. There are some areas you cannot go beyond a certain stage. So the people says, does we mean that we need to have high-rise buildings everywhere? No, we cannot take the Hong Kong model. We need to take a model which is adaptable to our climate, adaptable to our culture and tradition. So if you're thinking in terms of the high-rise buildings, the cluster of high-rise buildings, people talk about it, and I say, see, you need to be aware of the fact that urbanization is a process where settlements are transforming. City is only an expression, only an outcome of urbanization. When you have urbanization, the city becomes the big indicator to say how are we progressing. So if you look at all our cities, all the growth that is happening is in class 1 cities. But we have a unique situation in Kerala. We have large number of census towns, we have large number of outgrowths, we have large number of urban panchayats, we have again the rural panchayats. So they're all integrated together.
So if we discuss that report in general, you had proposed regional development in terms of the potential for the future. So what I found very interesting was the northern Kerala, especially Kannur and Kasaragod, which were often ignored so far in our development models so far. They were marked as industrial potential urban centers. So what exactly makes that zone special?
So if you look at the whole ecosystem, so we had in the commission itself, we were looking at the growth drivers, we were looking at how the changes to the growth drivers. So usually we would take the growth drivers, we would say is land, labor and capital. So the main idea is that we have labor is there, which are largely out migrating, they are not staying back. We have highly efficient workforce, skilled workforce. We have a high potential for VR and IoT, information communication technology. But also the fact that within the growth drivers, we also look at the region, the whole Kerala state as a region. We're looking at clusters. So one of the key developments of urbanization process is the emergence of industrial corridors. Industrial corridors are very important because when we say how do you define industry, it is not necessarily the large industries that we see, because we see large industrial projects in Gujarat and other parts of India. In Kerala, it is largely led by MSMEs, medium and small size enterprises. Globally and in Kerala also and across the world, MSMEs employ the largest number of people, but they get very little financing, very little investment. All investment goes to the big companies, big conglomerates, but the small enterprises are really critical for the economy. So we have proposed that Kerala re-looks at all of the MSMEs to provide support so that they can build this, they become part of this industrial corridor. The success of this corridor that we're talking about, the corridors in Kannur, Kasaragod, or right across Thrissur and other parts of Palakkad, etc., they can be successful only when you have a very deeply, strongly defined local economic development framework. How do you localize economic development? Kudumbashi is a classic example of the success of Kudumbashi. Is so important because Kudumbashi enabled the social enterprise to be supremely successful at the rural level. How do you provide scalable options? That's where the local economic development becomes very important to scale some of the enterprises, which is regional as well, which is urban as well. Okay, so look at some of the areas. We propose the fact that we have a very high level of technical skills in the state. So the commission proposed a Gyanashri. So have like the Kudumbashi model, have a Gyanashri model, which will connect all of these skilled individuals who can come together to support the various departments, etc. And I think the key contribution about the Gyanashri is we utilized many young urban fellows, young boys and girls, about 10 of them, who worked with us for almost 15 months. The transformation is enormous because they got an opportunity to work with the top scientists, with the top academics, with everyone. So we saw that this is an incredible opportunity to build capacity. But how do you use this capacity for the future? It is really important for the state to nurture this capacity. We worked very closely with the Kerala Institute of Local Governance, KILA, which has been recognized nationally as one of the top institutions in the country by the central government. But we need to go beyond it. I am very keen to see that KILA becomes a center for excellence in the state of Kerala because it's providing training, it's providing mentorship. We need to build the urban observatory, which is one of the recommendations, that an urban observatory which collects all the data from all areas. So we have a large amount of institutions in Kerala which don't talk to each other. We need to bring them together. We need to get that data to be democratized. That data should be used for the support and the benefit of the state. You cannot sit on the data without asking, without allowing. So if a councillor says, a municipal councillor says, I need this data, that data should be available to the person to plan for it, to plan against disaster, to mitigate disaster. At this point, people are sitting on the data saying, nobody should touch this data because this is my fiefdom. This is my property. This is my zamindari. And I want to say very clearly, this data is for everybody. Everyone should have access to that data. They should be able to plan for the people, and this is for the people.
So, because you mentioned data, and there was a special reference to subterranean data.
Yes.
For Kerala's urban geography. This first time, personally, I have come across that time. So, why did Commission put forward that idea?
So, one of the things that we do in the modern technology, because we were trying to bring data, and we were very lucky to have Professor Krishnamurthy from ISRO, the distinguished scientist. So, I have been part of that discussion debate with Professor Krishnamurthy, and we were very keen, based on my experience out of the UK and with my university, Queen's University, Belfast, we were very keen to look at the LiDAR data. We were very keen to look at the DEM data, Digital Elevation Model data. Some of the data have been provided by the Bhuvan portal. So we got access to the Bhuvan portal, looking at the real-time data to see how the data was transforming, changing in the last 15 months. We used most of the projections from that data. So really, when we look at the city, our perceptions of urban development, urban planning has always been above the city, above the surface. We have never looked at urban development from below the surface of the city. Below the surface of the city can be highly fragile. We have global examples of sinkholes. Suddenly the area is collapsing, the streets collapsing because there's no structural stability below the city. So we don't know at this point in time, no city in India knows how structurally stable are the cities. So when you're building new cities, are they structurally stable? So these are very important questions. If you are going to build a city on a riverbank, how much of structural stability is there? Okay, so I think India, with all its technical skills, all its ability to reach the Mars and the moons, I would say please look at the structural stability of the cities below the surface, because you have all the data from the transportation sector, from every sector. We have put sensors, we have put tube wells, particularly the Geological Survey of India, the ground penetrating radar systems. We have all the data. We need to integrate that data and provide it to the people who are planning for the city, to the planners who are planning for the city, to the managers who are managing disasters, constructing attributes for the protection, particularly for developing what you call the ability, adaptability, resilience. So I use the term stabilization, adaptation, and mitigation. The troika of climate change is stabilization, adaptation, and mitigation. We don't talk about stabilization because stabilization we've forgotten. We only talk about adaptation and mitigation. Mitigation is a very costly exercise. Like remediation is a very costly exercise. If we can stabilize what we have, and if we can adapt people to the change that is already occurring, we are in a very strong position to deal with the challenges imposed by climate change.
So, you mentioned the subterranean data might be there spread across different platforms. So, Union government already has come out with the national Gati Shakti plan where all the infrastructure related data is available layer by layer.
Sure.
So, would it be nice that one more layer is added for the subterranean?
I think so. I think subterranean level data is extremely important, because once you know how structurally stable the cities are, so earthquakes we can preempt, we can plan for earthquake disasters, especially in the regions. Like most of the cities are around that. So northeast, we had a recent earthquake in Myanmar, and impact in the northeast will have been felt. And there are cities in our part of the world. So if there is sudden change in sea level rise, if structurally things become unbalanced, then we have some mitigation opportunities available, some preemptive opportunities. So if we know an area is extremely weak, we will not encroach that space. Today, we don't think about building the next high-rise building. We don't ask questions. The place where we have selected, are they right? Look at the wetlands that we have. Almost all the wetlands, we have to maintain, we have to preserve those wetlands, because wetlands provide the sustenance for the city. If you start filling up the wetlands to build another high-rise building, another colony, then we are asking for huge ecological disaster that will come through.
You mentioned the wetland, and there is always resistance in Kerala towards. If we have seen that earlier Supreme Court verdict of demolishing an apartment violating the zoning. But when we consider cities like London, for example, it is built on the banks of Thames. High-rise buildings, they exist almost into the Thames. So what makes Kerala or India distinguished from the development model that's applicable to London?
And to the West? I think that's a very good question. So really speaking, we are dealing with high population density and population size. So when you look at the cities in the global south, particularly in Kerala and rest of India, you understand that we are dealing with huge population size, high levels of density, which is not always the norm in the cities in the West. Having said that, we also understand that the technological advancements where they have built barriers, sea barriers, are very strongly and constructed, scientifically constructed. So if you go to Venice, for instance, you see that the barriers to protect against sea level rise, where they have gates which go up and down, particularly dealing with the tidal range up and down. Today, we do not have that facility in any city, whether it's Mumbai, whether it is Kerala. No cities have those facilities available. And people have to start thinking, and the government have to start thinking, how can we invest in some of those technologies? It's not just having a technology for technology's sake, but adapting it to the needs of the people. And that is very important. So when you are able to deal with the almost all of the storm drains have to be cleaned every year. Sometimes you forget. You can get a 2 months rainfall in one day. See what happened in Mumbai. We've seen that happening in the cities, most advanced cities in Spain, in Barcelona, huge floods, 2 months of rainfall in one day. Now those extreme rainfall, outburst, cloudburst and rainfall happens in the Himalayas. It will happen here too. We have seen that happening when post-monsoon or pre-monsoon showers coming in, very heavy showers. It's not the norm because we are disrupting almost all of the global rain flows and all the other trade winds. So we have seen the disruption in the trade winds across the world. The glaciers melting will reduce the temperature of the seas, will definitely increase the fresh water into the seas, will increase seawater warming, and it will have direct impact on the biotic features as well as on the climate, the global climate.
Climate change, it's reality, we know it. And climate financing was a term that was referred to continuously maybe 5 years back, but no longer the currency.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no longer the currency. So how do you see, because you have proposed a state level carbon financing body also, advisory body for the state, but is it really workable anymore, considering the disruption in the climate financing model?
There is definitely a recognition that with the geopolitical changes globally, there has been a sort of a step back in terms of the proactiveness regarding climate finance. But I think increasingly the internationally or nationally determined challenges and goals that we have. So when we look at the COPs, COP26, COP28, all the way through, nations have been asked to devise their own policies to deal with it. So I think climate finance is one way to recompensate for the poorer countries of the world where they are not responsible for the global pollution. So if you look at the emissions itself, most of them are...
The West is no longer
willing to.
In an agreement.
No, they will not.
And ultimately the finance we have to...
deal with it, we have to raise it. So I think the poorer countries in the global south obviously will have challenges. But this is where India's leadership in the G20 becomes very important. Because as a G20 nations, we take the responsibility. How as a leader for global south, the G20 is very important. I think India's leadership has been very significant. How can we promote that perspective? Because climate finance is to devise, you can create all ideas around climate finance. But I think the starting point for climate finance is to be creative and innovative. And also to make sure that we are able to reduce our ecological footprints. I always say prosperity not at the cost of planet. This is a concept which has been deeply embedded within our Indian philosophy and Indian psychology. The whole idea that if we can protect our planet, if we can protect our forests, if we can protect our rivers and the mountains, we are a much happier human species. And I think the climate finance question is very important and becomes crucial when we are able to reduce the ecological footprint of our cities, of our rural areas. At this point in time, as cities expand, London's ecological footprint is 125 times the size of the city. All its products that you get is from many other parts of the world. So we don't want to go in the London direction. I always say that every state should be able to draw its resources from within its boundaries. There are many materials that we don't get. Apple comes only from Himachal. Of course, we would like to have those apples, and Kashmir. But I think it's important to say how can we make sure that our ecological footprints are reduced, number one. How do we decarbonize? In order to deal with climate change, we have to decarbonize. We cannot have an energy intensive development. We have to decarbonize. We have to start thinking in terms of circular economy. A circular economy where we do not have a linear system of urban metabolism. We have a circular metabolism where resources can be recycled and reused again and again. As when I was growing up, we had the same fountain pen, we had the same pens, we used the same, everything was the same, we could recycle it. They changed the nibs. Today we just use and throw. This was the approach that the West had. But today West have realized that they don't have the ability to just use and throw. So when we think about the 3 R's, reduce, reuse and recycle. Reduce, reuse and recycle.
And all these we are
responsible. So when you say reduce, reuse and recycle and reuse is deeply embedded.
Part of us.
Is part of us. Everyone talks about reuse and recycle. We don't have it in our vocabulary to reduce. So our ability to reduce has disappeared. We don't talk about reduction. We bring food into the table, we don't even eat half of it. We dump it into the bin. We don't even say, this food is not necessary now, we finished our food, can we give it to an orphanage? Can we give it to an ashram? We don't talk about it. We just throw the food because we are so used to the idea that I don't use it, we throw it. I say, use that food, give it to someone who is needy.
Because you talked about people as well as and cities or urban planning is no longer about the space, it's about the people as well. And considering Kerala's recent trajectory in terms of its demography, there is a sizable community of migrant laborers.
Yes.
And in the future, it's going to increase for sure. And second, senior citizens, old age people, population with us. So, what will the Commission propose for factoring in these demographic realities?
Yes, I think the Commission was very mindful about the fact that Kerala is a fast aging society, and because of the aging population, we have to provide support systems across the state for all of the aging population. I think the crucial point is to be mindful about the needs of the aging population. It's not just one care. So having an integrated approach, and I have mentioned in my report here, and I've just picked up some of the points regarding the health and well-being, is particularly having a data-driven system, a data-driven health systems, which is very important because we have to start thinking about prevention. So if a person reaches the age of 55 or 50 plus, automatically we should be having that data to say if people have comorbidities. So one of the challenges that we see during COVID is that epidemiological transitions had already happened in the state like Kerala. So Kerala suffered differently from UP or Bihar because we had already reached that advanced stage of demographic transition where aging population has taken on. So we found that comorbidities associated with that different lifestyles actually had major implications during COVID. So recognizing that, we said, okay, how do we identify the gaps in the health data? So we have private healthcare systems, we have public healthcare systems. There's no conversation between the two, even though people claim it. So when you look at Singapore is a classic example where both public and private healthcare systems data is integrated. So if you're as an individual getting both private and public treatment, public care treatment or private treatment, that data is in one place. So if there's any intervention needed for any major issues, they already have that. So there's what we say, there's no contraindications in terms of the data, in terms of the medication that you have. So it's very important to have that. So for a senior citizens, it's important that once you reach the age of 50 or 60, then automatically there's a constant prompt from the data to say you're now due for a blood test in 3 weeks. That should come in as a natural. Now we have an integrated system. We have a huge IT system here, but it has not been integrated to the needs of the people. We need to send the UPI, the Aadhaar is fantastic. But today we need to start thinking in terms of Ayush. How do we integrate that data, healthcare data, so that every individual's healthcare is personalized because the data is available?
So I think central government already has an Aadhaar ID concept that's to pick up proper traction. But still, I hope that will fill into the vacuum right now. How about these migrant laborers?
Yes.
We are going to deal with that very prominently. We can't deny it.
Yeah.
Kerala will no longer be the land of just Malayalis alone.
No.
So how will we plan?
So the migrant communities is very important because migrant communities bring innovation, migrant communities bring creativity, and migrant communities become an economic asset to any country in the world. Okay, so when I look at a migrant, I'm a migrant in the UK, even though I'm still an Indian citizen. But every migrant within the country also is an economic asset. And we need to think about how to improve the ability to contribute to the economy of the state. So for me, that is the first step.
Don't you think Kerala, we can't compare the situation with Kerala and the West, because ultimately West might be getting a more refined skilled
laborers,
whereas we actually are more into the unskilled
and semi-skilled, unskilled.
But anyhow, that will be the reality also. There will be a sizable proportion for the unskilled
And the skilled.
And how do we attract skilled women? Even
Yeah.
that will be a question.
The skilled, I'll come to the skilled in a minute, but when you look at the unskilled, again, if you look at the models that we have in Malaysia and Singapore historically, largely semi-skilled, unskilled were largely from people around, okay? So they have built a very successful system where the transition, the first generation transition, so first generation migrant, like everywhere else, usually be semi-skilled and skilled. When they went to London, they worked in the factories as unskilled laborers, got skills, got training, and moved up the scale. So we need to have a very clear policy of improvement of the human skill sets. What we see, and I must mention this, that what we have seen across Kerala, but I'm sure this will be true of all other states, there's an incredible mismatch between skills and the jobs they do. Okay, so if you're a doctor, then you are doing something else. You're not doing the work that you have spent all your time to be a doctor. If you're an engineer, out of IIT, you spend time selling products, okay, for a major corporation. So there's a complete mismatch because you're an engineer, you should be producing materials. You're not there as a salesperson. So we have transformed the ability of an engineer into a salesperson. And that becomes more glorified than the actual skilled engineer that the country needs. The same is true of the doctors. So we find that even among these unskilled laborers, they have an opportunity, and we must provide an opportunity for them to move to the next step. Most of them come for a few years, maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years, and they always have the dream to go back. All of us, when we became migrants, had the same dream. But I think we need to start thinking in terms of India as a nation. Everyone is part of one whole. And we need to start thinking about how do we build the capacity of the people of this country, Kerala included, and the migrants are coming from India, they're not coming from all over. So they also should be given the opportunity to become an economic asset to reach the goals that the state, the government, and the country has for the rest of our citizens. So how do they also benefit as a member of that Indian state, but in Kerala, to improve their abilities, their skills, their technical abilities, etc. So those are really important aspects.
Basically, to facilitate to find their home in Kerala.
In Kerala, and help them to understand that they are part of our community. They are not outsiders. They are part of us. And I think we have to remove that stigma that anyone who's a foreigner, anyone who's an outsider is a foreigner. Anyone who's a foreigner is an alien. Okay, so we are not an alien. We are not a foreigner. They are Indians first, before, and last. And all of them have an opportunity, they have a responsibility to contribute to the national growth.
Oh, sure. This is the main point that our urban future should be planning for. And that's where the migrant communities have a very important role for us to plan our future as well. It's not just us and them, it's we together in this journey towards the future. So that's it, sir. We had a wonderful conversation. And before concluding it, you had a concept of 4 Ps, which was mentioned in the report as well.
Yes.
Incorporating people into the whole planning.
Yeah.
So can you just put...
So yes, I think I'm glad you asked me that question, because the 4 Ps are really public, private, and people's partnership. Kerala is a unique state in the world, unique state in India, where everything has been devolved at the grassroots level. So while we have fiscal autonomy, we had the Kerala model of development, it has run its course, but we have to move to the next level of elevation. And I always say, you have to go to if you have to change the gears on a highway, you cannot drive on a first gear. You have to move into 5th gear. To move into the 5th gear, we need to build up all our institutions. We have to strengthen our institutions. We have to professionalize our institutions. We have to make sure that public partnership and people's partnership can only come into fruition when the institutions are strengthened, when we take ownership of our own prosperity, when we become self-reliant as a state, where we are able to build our resources, create our own resources, and are able to contribute to the goals of the state, the goals of the nation, to become the trillion-dollar economies that we visualize. But I think most important is to strengthen our local governmental institutions, more integration, more communication. Data is central. Data is central to this whole commission's success. The more data we have, the more ability to work with the data. We need geostatistics. We need people who are able to read data, who are able to work with the data, to provide us with plans that will be successful. We had a mandate of 1 year to write this commission report. People thought it was impossible. Most people, I think there were a lot of people who thought this is impossible. This cannot be done in 1 year because usually commissions are always given 6 months extension. I'm very proud to say we had full autonomy on this particular report. As I said, we had full autonomy to do this report for the commission. We had complete autonomy to work on our own specialisms. We had conversations, and just to give you some key data on what we said, we had close to about, let me give you some ideas, if you can just give me 2 seconds, I'll give you some fast figures. Yes, so we had about 10 policy pillars. So we had 10 themes, okay, 10 themes in the commission. We had 33 commissioned short studies, 33 commissioned short studies, just to give you the extent of what we did in less than 1 year. Bear in mind that 1 year also had the national elections, okay? So 7 months in a way we were able to do. So 10 pillars with 33 commissioned short studies. We had taken the help of many expert institutions within the state and outside the state. So for example, so we did that. We had 53 stakeholder meetings. 53 stakeholder meetings was there for us to provide information. So right across the 14 districts, from the north of Kerala to the south of Kerala, we had complete stakeholder engagements. We met with close to over 2,500 people, representatives across the board, okay? And we produced an output of 2,359 pages. 2,359 pages we have produced in the course of 7 months. And that is the success of this commission, because this commission was here to do business. This commission was here to explain to the people how important climate change is, how immediate is climate change, and how needy it is for us to make sure that we are able to take this, not waiting for another 5 years, immediately implementing it. So I'm very pleased to say that the Kerala budget of 2025 incorporated the metropolitan MPCs, planning committees were mentioned, green finance was mentioned, and also circular economy, decarbonization. In terms of decarbonization, the opportunities on hydrogen is enormous. We have to look at alternative energies to secure our energy needs, particularly the energy security systems. These are great opportunities. And I think just to say that, we were able to deliver this in the 31st of March was my mandate. And at the same time, as I said, with the IPCC 2025 focusing on climate change and cities, we will be one of the first countries in the global south, which I can say very proudly, have produced this report for the government of Kerala. And I'm sure the central government will also look at it. And I'm very happy to support whichever we need for the sake of our country. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.